Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking all about moon water, what it is, how you create it and what you can use it for within your magical practice. So moon water is probably one of the most well-known magical items that you can create. I'm sure almost everyone has heard of it. It's on Instagram, it's on Tumblr, it's on Facebook, it's all over YouTube. Lots of people do it, lots of people make it, lots of people use it. And today, that is what we are going to be talking about. Now, it's probably one of the items that a lot of beginners make first. It's easy, it's useful, there's lots and lots of different ways that you can use it, so it makes it a really good craft that you can do by yourself, with your family, with your coven, with your children, whatever it might be. It's a really great, simple and useful thing that you can make, whether you are a beginner witch or a more advanced witch. Hopefully you will find a use for this video and the topic being discussed. So first things first, what is moon water? Well, moon water is water that is infused with the energy of the moon, usually during a specific phase or a specific time. So often people will make full moon water, but you can also make new moon, waxing, waning, dark moon, whatever it might be. Some people also create moon water during a specific time, such as a supermoon or a blue moon or an eclipse. It really all depends on the person that's making it and what they want to use the water for. Now, each moon phase has its own energy, and you can then use that energy within your workings even after that phase is gone if you have an item that contains the energy of that moon phase. Now, I do have a full video on what you can use and what you can do during the different moon phases. I will link it up here for any of you guys that want to learn a little bit more about that rather than me saying it all again in this video. So the idea behind moon water is that it gives you a vessel where you can store the energy of that moon phase or that time for a later date, and you can then use it in your magical practice. You can then use it in your kitchen magic, in your water magic, you can use it in offerings, you can use it in your magical gardening, whatever it might be. There are so many different ways that you can use it. Now, to make moon water, almost every practitioner has a slightly different technique. They vary from exceptionally simple to exceptionally complex. I'm going to be talking about two different techniques in this video. The first is the one that most people will read about and is very, very simple. The second is the technique that I use in my own personal practice just because I find it has the better effect. So, technique number one, you're going to want to get a vessel that you can put fresh water in. Ideally, you're going to want boiled or spring water just so there's less chance of bacteria growing in it and there's also less sediment. I don't know if you've ever seen tap water settle, but there be bits in that. So if you do want to do this, it's best to do it with bottled water, spring water, boiled water, whatever it might be, just to really help preserve it for as long as possible. You're going to want to add this water into a clean vessel. Preferably glass is best rather than plastic, just because one, better for the environment, and two, it just has a better energy to it. Plastic is an insulator. Whether that is for electronics or for magic, plastic is an insulator, so it's going to limit the amount of energy that's going to be able to get into that water. Glass is going to allow more of that energy to enter into that water. It's not going to hinder anything, it's just going to allow it straight through. So between the two, choose glass over plastic, even if that means just using a bowl or a mug or a glass or a mason jar. That's what I use. I like using mason jars. And it's also, it's just nicer. It's just nicer in it, having a glass of water, like a fancy thing, than a plastic bottle of water. Choose glass. So once you have your water in your glass, you're then going to want to leave it somewhere for anywhere between 2 and 8 hours, really, depending on your situation, of course. Now, some people will choose to use it directly under moonlight, so they'll put it outside. Now, not everyone has the ability to leave something safely outside. I know if I left something outside, it would get nicked in about 2 seconds. But for some people, if you have an enclosed, secure garden, you can actively leave them outside to charge. You can also leave it on windowsills to charge. That's personally my favorite technique, mainly because I don't want my moon water getting nicked. So I keep it inside instead. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get asked about moon water is, does it need to be under direct moonlight? What if it's cloudy? What if the moonlight doesn't hit my window? It doesn't need to. The energy of the moon is so intense, it's able to move our oceans even when it's covered with cloud. The same goes for energetic work as well. The energy of the moon is still present, even if clouds are covering it, even if your room isn't directly going to get hit by that moonlight. It's about the energy of the time and the place rather than the direct light hitting it. Otherwise, a lot of us, especially here in England, would really struggle with that one because it's cloudy more often than it's not. So you can just leave it on a windowsill or outside or in some area where you're not going to forget about it, but it is also going to get as much of that energy as possible. So putting it closer to windows is better because you're not being blocked by walls and furniture and carpet and all of that stuff that's going to interfere with the energy and get in the way. You're going to want it to be as close to outside as you can, even if you can't actually put it outside. Now you then leave it to sit for a couple of hours. Some people will leave it for just 2 hours. Some people will leave it overnight and then get it before the sun rises the next day. It's whatever works for you. If you know you're not going to catch it before the sun rises the next morning, it's best to just do it in the evening. And even if it just steeps for 3-4 hours, it's better than nothing, you know? So you don't have to leave it out all night if you don't want to. You can just steep it for a certain amount of time. Once this is done, you can then take it away from the window. You're going to want to label it with a date so that you don't forget when you did it, and then you're going to want to put it in a fridge. Now, the reason for the fridge is so that it doesn't go bad and that you can then use it for longer and longer, because unfortunately, water does not self-preserve and it will go moldy and really quickly. So best to get it in a fridge. If you aren't able to safely put it in a fridge, then just a cold area is probably the best way to go about it. I know that some of you are still in the broom closet, and sticking a jar that says moon water in your family fridge maybe isn't the best option, but if you can just keep it somewhere that stays a little colder, so dark cupboards, that kind of thing, but you are going to have less time to use it than if it was in the fridge. So the second technique for making moon water is the one that I personally use myself. It isn't much different, but I find it helps with the energy just a little bit more. So what I will do is I will use a jar. I will use a clean, dry jar, and I will use spring water usually. Sometimes I will just use tap water depending on how desperate I am. But what I will do is I'll fill the mason jar up with water. I find I personally don't need that much because I don't use much of it. But if you need more, you can do multiple mason jars if you wanted, or see if you could find like a giant mason jar. I really want to see if they do them, you know, like ginormous mason jars. Right, I'm going off topic here. So the idea being is that you fill the mason jar with water and you then seal the cap. I then take a candle, usually a white candle, and I will scribe some moon glyphs on that relate to the moon phase that I want the energy to work with. So if it is a full moon, I will scribe full moon glyphs. If it is a waxing moon, I'll use waxing moon glyphs and symbols and sigils, anything that's really going to attract it in. I then use charged oil. That could be a specific blend of oil to suit the moon phase, so a full moon oil or a new moon oil. Or you can just use charged activated olive oil, just a little bit, to add onto that candle. And I dress it top to bottom. The idea being that I want to draw that lunar energy downwards. I want it to go through the candle into the jar itself. So what I'll then do is I will melt the bottom of that candle, usually with a lighter or a match, and I will stick it onto the top of that mason jar. I will see if I can to insert a photo of one that I did for the blue moon a couple of years ago. If I can find it, I'll stick it here so you can see what I mean. So what I'll do is I will attach that candle to the top of the jar with the symbols, the glyphs. I'll use certain colors if I want to match a specific type of moon, like the blue moon one that I did. I will dress it with that oil, and then as I leave it on that windowsill, I will light the candle. The idea being then that as it burns down, it will draw the energy in to the water that's beneath it. It's just kind of an extra layer of intention. So rather than just passively allowing the water to gain that energy, instead I actively draw the energy down into the water. And for me anyway, I find that to be a really good technique for kind of supercharged moon water. Because what I do is I make smaller quantities, so I don't need to store huge bottles of the stuff. So what I will do is, rather than storing large quantities of it, I will just have a smaller bottle that I can then dilute into other water, and it has the same energetic effect because it's very, very strong. So then once that candle is burned down, I will leave that water to sit in the light or close to the light for as long as I possibly can. Usually it's between 4 and 8 hours, depending on how long I can stay awake, and then I will bring it in and I will keep it somewhere dark and safe, whether that be a fridge, whether that be just a dark corner that you can keep things private in. And then I will use that as and when I see fit, making sure that I put a date on it so I remember when I did it, so I don't forget about it, and then attempt to use it 2 months later and realize it's really, really old. So that's kind of two main techniques for how you can make moon water, but how do you use it? A lot of people will make the stuff and then they'll have no idea what to do with it after that. Like, what do you do with it? So here are just some ways that you can use moon water. Of course, there are far more, and there are very, very specific things that you can use moon water for that I've not mentioned in here. I've mainly gone for the things that are going to be the most useful for absolutely everyone. So the first is cleansing. Now, water is a great thing to use in cleansing, and especially at certain moon phases, using moon water for cleansing could be a really good option, like the waning moon or the new moon, or even if you want to really banish something out of your life, even the dark moon, you can use this water really effectively for cleansing, whether that be spiritual baths, spiritual washes, floor washes. You can cleanse your crystals and your tools as long as they are safe. Please do not put dissolvable crystals or toxic crystals in water. It will not end well. I warned you, don't do it. Make sure your crystals are safe before you put them in water. But you can do personal ritual baths, floor washes, surface washes. You can cleanse items, objects, whatever it might be with that energy in the water. So not only do you have the energy of the moon phase, you also have the energetic properties of the water being a very good cleansing agent. So that's one really good technique. The second is ritual baths generally. Different phases of the moon have different properties. So although the darker phases of the moon, the waning phases, may be better for cleansing, you can use the amplification phases, the waxing phase, and the full moon for bringing in positive things, whether that be love or money or joy or peace, whatever it might be. You can then use it in your ritual baths alongside herbs and oils to really add that energy into that working. And it's really good if you know you want to do a ritual bath working that month, you can make the water in advance and use it during the working that you're planning on doing. Now the next is scrying. Now I mentioned water scrying on my 6 things that you can do for a full moon video. I will link it up here if you guys want to go and watch that. So the very brief technique of doing it is that you have a dish, usually a dark inside dish. You then fill it with water, you go into a trance-like state, and you see the images and the symbols and the representations that come up in that water, and you tap into your psychic subconscious in order to understand the meanings that you need to know. And you can do this with any kind of water, but you can also do it with moon water to add a little bit of that extra energy in there, especially if it is full moon water, because full moon is really closely connected to psychic energy, the subconscious. And so it's really good, especially during divination workings, that you can add in a little bit of moon water, a little something, full moon water, just to kind of add a little bit extra oomph into your intuitive skills. Now, if you have a green thumb, which I definitely don't have, you can also water your herbs and magical plants with moon water. So if you have any herbs that you use very specifically for spell work and ritual, you can use the moon water to actually water your plants, or you can use a little bit diluted with other water to add a little bit extra oomph into your working. So whether that be from the waxing moon or maybe the full moon, to add a little amplification energy in there, you can use it to assist the growth of your plants magically while you tend to them physically. I think that's quite a nice route to take. It's also really good if you just have plants that are just like on a windowsill. It gives you a really good way of connecting with them energetically and really helping them along, even if they're only in pots rather than the ground. So that is a really good option. Now, moon water can actually be drunk, but I would recommend only drinking it for up to 3 days after you've made it, and only if it has been refrigerated. Please treat it as you would treat any other water. Don't just drink stale water that's been sitting there for 2 weeks. It's not going to be good for you. Water does harbour bacteria, especially if it isn't distilled water. If it is just standard water, you are going to find that bacteria growths do happen, so please don't make yourself sick. Please refrigerate your water if you're planning on drinking it, and only drink it for 3 days. Thank you, PSA is over. But you can use moon water in your kitchen magic. You can also use it to drink. So a lot of people will use them in infusions, in water infusions with herbs, with fruits. They will use it with crystals, done safely. I want to add, done safely. But you can just drink it to kind of add that energy into yourself and also into any workings. If you know that you drink a lot of tea or you want to drink something during a ritual, you can make your tea with moon water that matches the moon phase that you want to work with, and then drink that within your workings. It's kind of layering stuff on top of one another. It's a really great way of doing it. If you know you want to be making stock, or if you know you want to be making pasta, you can always add in a little bit of that water into the pasta water or into the stock that you're planning on making, so that you infuse your food with that energy, kitchen witch style. So there's lots of different things you can do with it just in the kitchen itself. Just please make sure that you are safe. Don't use it for longer than you should. Please don't want anyone getting sick because they wanted to drink moon water way past when they should drink it. You can then use it to paint with. It's a really cool technique, especially if you're very artistic. If you paint in your book of shadows, or you create intuitive artwork, or you just like painting. If you use any kind of paint that uses water, like acrylic or watercolor, you can use moon water as the paint that you're using, so that you can add a little bit of that lunar energy into the artwork that you are manifesting. And honestly, I think that's such a really interesting way of doing it. It adds kind of your own magic into your just hobbies, into things that you just do normally, which I really, really like. Now, alongside this, you can also add it into your magic. And that being that you can have chalices with moon water in it during spell work and ritual. You can destroy sigils with it. You can add it into outdoor workings. There's so many things that you can do with it ritually. Add it into spell work wherever and whenever you can. If it's going to add the energy into that working, it's a really interesting thing to add in and incorporate. And then the last thing is that you can use it during ceremony and ritual, not just spell work and ritual, but active ceremonies, things like Wiccanings, hand fastings, Esbat celebrations, Sabbath celebrations. People often use it to anoint themselves, forehead, face, neck, wrists, wherever it might be, during spell work, but also rituals and very ceremonial practices like hand fastings and Wiccanings. It's used to add a little bit of extra intention into group work, and also allows everyone to be joined together during a hand fasting by this kind of connection of the water from person to person. It's a really interesting way of using it. And if you are planning on doing any ritual events, it can be good to dress tools, to dress crystals, to dress people, you know, all that kind of jazz. It's a really interesting way of using it, especially if you do have a hand fasting coming up. Using some full moon water to just kind of anoint your forehead could be a really nice thing to add into it. And a lot of people do it. A lot of people, when they're doing meditations, they will also anoint themselves with moon water. Whatever phase it is that they need to be working on within themselves, they will use that phase to anoint themselves for that particular meditation, that trance work, that journeying, you know, whatever it might be. It can be a really great way of using it in a more ritualistic, ceremonial aspect of actually anointing, not just drinking or cooking or using it in baths and floor wash. So those are just some of the ways that you can use moon water, and that is just a little bit about what it is and how to make it. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I really hope that it was useful. If it was, feel free to give it a like. It really, really means so much to me. I want to know, how do you use your moon water? How do you create it? Do you do it differently than I do it? What do you do that's different? How do you use it? I would absolutely love to know. I'm really fascinated by seeing how other people use items within their own magical practice, so I would absolutely love to know. Feel free to let me know down in the comment section. Have a conversation about it, have a chat. I'm always down there kind of responding to people, so yeah, I might see you down there. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community, feel free to post a comment. And if you do enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 p.m. So I hope you guys are having a marvellous magical day. I hope that you are all safe and well, and I will see you in the next video.